Our main topic for today is keeping pets in homes by providing behavior support to the community. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We have three speakers today. Victoria Grainger from Marin Humane. She's the canine shelter behavior manager there. Alexandra Tonner, who's the founder for Paws for Life Canine Rescue. And John Grobman, the director for Paws for Life Canine Rescue. Welcome to all of you. I'll be sharing a little bit more about each of you in a second. Victoria, I think we'll get started with you, if that's okay.
Yeah, and it's Virginia, but that's okay.
Oh, thank you.
I answer to anything that starts with a V.
Apologies.
Well, almost anything. It's okay. It happens all the time. It's one of those names that gets Victoria, Veronica, Virginia. They all get mixed up.
And I've probably done it before and did not notice. So
no, you didn't do it before.
Okay, of course. Virginia, let me do a better introduction then. So Virginia Grainger, a little bit about Virginia. She got involved in sheltering by volunteering at Marin Humane in California starting in 2001. As time went on, she did more and more and joined the staff and became an instructor, a volunteer coordinator, evaluator, consultant, a few more positions. It sounds like with regard to Marin Humane, Virginia's done a lot of different roles. And Virginia also has a pretty broad and interesting background in terms of what she has done with her life. Some of the initials she can put after her name include BA, JD, impressive, CPDTKA. And currently she oversees canine evaluations, adoption dog consultations. She teaches classes and she also does private consultations at Marin Humane. So welcome, Virginia. Can you start by telling us a little bit about Marin Humane and the community that you support?
Okay. For those of you who don't know, I mean, we are lucky to be in a wealthy community. So we have a lot of, our budget's not very big. It's actually pretty small considering, but we don't have a lot of stray dogs in our community. So we go out to other shelters and rescue dogs. If we do have stray dogs in our community, they, they generally are not claimed because they just come from either a transient population or just people who are pretending that it's a stray dog and it's really their dog and they don't want to surrender for fees or whatever. But our community is pretty wealthy, so we're pretty lucky with that. We teach classes to the public. Everything from, basic obedience to agility and flyball and nose work classes. I think we're relatively small when compared to some of the shelters that we reach out to, like Fresno and, some of the bigger shelters in our area. So we generally are following a compassion for care model. No, not C4C, yeah, compassion for care. So we've reduced our population numbers to move more animals through, and that was working pretty well pre-COVID, but not so well now, at least not for me. I think that's it. If anybody has direct questions, I can answer them.
Cool, thank you. And so, if you have a question, you can right now unmute yourself and ask it, or you can type it into chat and we'll definitely get to your questions.
Virginia, I have a question. So the classes that you offer, is it to the public in the community or is it for the dogs that are in your care? What are those classes that you offer?
So yes, we offer classes for dogs at our shelter. We're very lucky because of our economic location, really. So we had more volunteers pre-COVID, obviously, I'm sure everybody's going through that. But one of the classes we offer for shelter dogs specifically is a scenting class or a nose work class. And we have 3 volunteers who run that 3 times a week, and other volunteers come and bring dogs to those classes. Long-term, those tend to be the best classes because they are sort of self-sufficient. We often offer classes for dogs at the shelter given by instructors, and volunteers bring the dogs. for whatever reason, they're never that successful. So we've done short-term classes where we had volunteers bring dogs to, classes for twice a week for 1 week and teach them tricks or something like that. What we're more successful with volunteer-wise is training the volunteers and then letting those volunteers train the dogs at the shelter. And then we offer classes to the public. We teach classes 7 days a week. Every day of the week, we teach, I don't know, between 5 and 10 classes. We have like 4 locations where we can teach classes if we include the outside spaces. So through COVID, our class income, I think it went up 400%. So we're really busting our butts getting all those COVID dogs trained.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next, I would love, Virginia, if you can talk about your program and what Marin Humane's to help keep behavior pets in homes. I know you have an amazing pet safety net program, but our focus today is behavior. So I'd love to hear about what you all do and how it's working.
So this program has been developing and getting stronger over the last, since 2019. My job is a recent creation to some degree. So as our department's getting more, budget, we get to hire more people. And when we did that, we have volunteers who call we have volunteers who call all of the people who adopted dogs. It used to be that we allowed the people who did the adoption, so our adoption department, to call all the people who adopted dogs within 2 weeks of adoption and check in. And those phone calls were kind of like, hey, how's it going? Cool, nice, that's it. And then we had a volunteer who worked in our department, specifically in behavior and training, start doing those calls. And so she was much more experienced, and she could call those people and say, hey, you get a free consultation within 6 months of adoption. Those are pretty much all with me. And you also have these handouts that are online. I think we have 30 handouts that are available online, and they cover, minor to more, complicated issues. And they get, it used to be a 20% discount on class, and I think we made it 15% recently. So they get a discount on their first class also. And as all of you know who teach classes, if you get them in for the first class, it's easier to keep them and give them support throughout the dog's adolescence, which, since there's a whole seminar on it, we know it's a big problem. So, keeping the dogs in their homes through that adolescent period is pretty tough. And we also offer pre-adopt consults. So when we have complicated dogs that we're adopting out with some behavior issues, we meet with the people prior. Sometimes, recently we met with a couple of families, 2 or 3 hours on different appointments before they adopted the dogs, because we want them to have a complete picture of the dog before they take it home. And that can work out okay, but not all of you work in this field, so not everybody believes you when you tell them the dog has certain issues. Then they get the dog home and they're like, I didn't know that you meant that when you said it. So then the other thing we have is, so once we had a volunteer in our own department start making those phone calls, we actually managed to track these numbers. Our adoption dog consultations went from about 12 a year to 54 to 60 a year. So it was a huge increase once people realized how valuable and easy it was to get that. And over, the last 3 years, we've done them everything from a phone call to a Zoom to in person, and they're 45 minutes long. And I do send them a short amount of notes, but I try not to invest a ton of time in it, because that's, I just try to rely on resources we already have available.
Thank you. Any questions for Virginia right now? All right, you can type them in the chat or unmute yourself. If there aren't any other questions, I can ask my next one for you, Virginia. And so that is related to your program to help prevent intake. Talk to me a little bit about how clients are triaged through your system and how they get to you and where they might go for other types of behavior support?
So one person I see asked how much behavior staff we have. In my specific department, pre-COVID, we had a significantly more people. Post-COVID, it's down to me and 2 full-time staff members, which is amazing. And a small number of volunteers, but our behavior volunteer staff have basically been just stopped. And we did have, prior to COVID, another 4 people doing evaluations. They're all gone now. So, and then we have my boss, so I guess 4 people, and then other support. So we have consultants also. We have another, I think, 6 consultants. So we have a big team. And like I said earlier, we have an income that supports those people. So it's been justified to the shelter higher ups. Clicks on our website. Yeah, that's way above my pay grade. Yeah, I have no idea. There's probably somebody who can do that. I don't know. I mean, you guys are all in nonprofit. You know that we hobble and cobble together all sorts of free and outdated software. We are no different in that way, even though we are in Marin.
And sorry, Virginia, let me just interrupt quickly to say that question was whether there's anyone who tracks the number of clicks on your website resources for behavior. So yeah, that's awesome if you have the ability to do that.
Yeah, I have no idea if somebody's tracking that, honestly. Okay, so going back to your question, Sheila, were you trying to ask about people who call in to surrender their dogs, or I got a little confused.
So your program to prevent intake, so people calling in to surrender their dogs.
So we have another department that is the front office, let's call it, or customer service, where people would call who want to surrender a dog. They have to live in Marin. That did change in May of 2019. We because we are a shelter with some resources, we were having neighboring shelters tell people to bring us their dogs, and generally those are dogs they didn't want in their shelter. So in May 2019, we actually had to change our policy because all of the dogs we were getting were behavior complicated dogs. So we changed that policy, and now we only get strays and owner surrenders in Marin specifically. Like many shelters, if somebody's surrendering their dog, often there's a behavior issue. So some people, if they call the front office and they interview them, they try and do as much intervention as possible. As you mentioned, we have our pet safety net. We'll offer resources, including food and medical care, and also free training. Free training, in my experience, never pans out to be useful. Discounted training is better. But free tends to not work. And then you also, of course, have the people who are just going to surrender their dog, no matter what you tell them. If during the interview with the front office or customer care, they feel like some red flags came up, like, oh yeah, the dog bit my neighbor or bit my neighbor's dog, or it gets in dog fights with our other dog, or things like that, I will get an email that asks me or somebody on my team to call the person and discuss with them the options for the dog coming to our shelter. Often I'll take those calls because I tend to be the most blunt person on our staff, or the most honest. And I also do all the evaluations, so I can give people an honest response. And I'll say, listen, your dog bit 5 people. I'm not going to put it up for adoption at our shelter. It's not going to happen with this history. I get a lot of, well, maybe you won't do it in another home. And I generally say, well, that may be perfect in our shelter, but I'd have to tell everybody that it bit 5 people. And then I help them come around to understanding, usually, if you adopted this dog, or if when you bought or purchased or adopted this dog, somebody said to you, your dog's going to bite 5 people, your friends aren't going to come over anymore, your grandkids aren't going to come over and visit you anymore, all the things that come with the responsibility of owning a dog like that. I help them understand they wouldn't have gone down this path themselves, and that it's irresponsible to put somebody else on that path. And I try to help them realize that behavioral euthanasia in a lot of cases is probably the best choice, and better than letting the dog sit in my shelter for 10 days with nobody able to touch it. Sometimes it's 10 days, sometimes it's 5 days, sometimes it's 3 days, but often, having them understand that the dog would be in a kennel and nobody could even take it out is helpful. And then I'll offer them some behavior euthanasia resources. I'll say, if your vet isn't going to help you with the procedure, you can come back to us and we'll set up an appointment. And then, the process is really fast and happens that day. If the people just need, if I talk to them and I realize it's not as major or not as big of a deal, that sometimes helps. We've had a number of people who didn't even think about calling back their breeder to send the dog back to the breeder. I've had that resource work out 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years. And that I really appreciate those breeders. I have also had breeders who refuse to take the dogs back. But sometimes that does work out and the breeders are happy to take their own dog back. Yeah, I think that covers it all. If anybody has any questions, I could not keep track of the questions. So
yeah, thank you, Virginia. Yeah, we'll get to the questions closer towards the end. I want to make sure we cover everything that we want to cover, but please keep the questions coming in. We appreciate them. Thank you for talking about all this, Virginia. And I know behavioral euthanasia is a difficult topic to talk about, but I do feel that it's an important one. And I don't want us to talk about the line in terms of would you place that versus would you not place that. But when we have a situation where an animal is unsafe to stay in their home and would also be unsafe to place in a new home, I agree with you. I feel that it is the most humane thing to do for the animal, and the best thing to do for the animal, if we're sure we've exhausted all options, is to do that euthanasia before the pet comes into the shelter, when they're still with their loving home and surrounded by people who care about them. But it's a controversial issue, but I think something really, really important to talk about. Does anybody else have a program like that where you provide that type of counseling? We'd love to hear about that in chat. And while we're looking to see what gets added to the chat, I am going to introduce, thank you, Virginia. Please stay on because we'll have questions at the end, but going to introduce our next 2 speakers who are going to be tag teaming things. That is Alex Tonner and John Grobman. Alex is the founder of Paws for Life Canine Rescue. A little bit about her: she spent many years volunteering for dog rescues and helped implement the Paws for Life prison program, which John already mentioned a little bit, in 2014 at the California State Prison in Lancaster. That program transformed the lives of both the incarcerated dog trainers and the dogs, and it sounds like it transformed your life too, Alex. But the men prepared the dogs for adoptions, and the dogs made life inside the prison a little bit better. As the program's reputation grew, Paws for Life became its own nonprofit, and its trainers became certified to train shelter dogs to serve as service animals for war veterans suffering from PTSD. So super inspirational. But the main thing they're here to talk about today is that they launched the People and Pet Innovation Center in October 2021. That center's focus is helping people to keep their pets. So that's what they do. And a little bit about John. So John is the director of programs for Paws for Life Canine Rescue. In his role, John oversees the training programs inside 3 California state prisons. And I know that's been a challenge with COVID and access to prison these days. And he also oversees the People and Pet Innovation Center. John brings with him 8 years of dog training experience, including training service dogs for military veterans with PTSD. John studied dog emotion and cognition at Duke University, super exciting, and is also an AKC certified evaluator. His hands-on experience teaching and overseeing the training of hundreds of dogs has played a valuable role in him gaining the necessary skills to oversee such a huge program. Interesting fact about John, he, in his spare time, he trains his Belgian Malinois, who is fluent in more than 60 cues, and he's often by John's side at seminars and speaking engagements. Welcome, John and Alex.
Thank you. So I just want to tell everyone about our innovation center. We started this center because I sit on a steering committee, the NKLA steering committee in LA. And as I was going to the shelters to pull dogs, I kept seeing the same dogs over and over again, for up to 18 months at a time, sometimes 2 years, dogs sat in the shelter without any kind of outcome. And then we started a program within the prison system to give incentive to anyone who adopted a dog from the shelter. We offered them 6 weeks free board and train at the prison if they adopted these long-term dogs that were sometimes at the shelter for 18 months or longer. And that program kicked off 2 years ago. And in the first year, we put 120 large bully breed dogs through that program. And we're every year it's slowly increasing the numbers. And so we decided, because people still needed the help on the, you know, after they picked up their dogs and everything, that we should really start a re-entry program, because our guys that were in our program that were serving life sentences were being commuted by the governor and able to come out and work. So we begged our donors, and we ended up building our centre at the back end of Best Friends in Mission Hills, and we completely revamped that area, where we have 5 training yards. We have 7 full-time trainers on staff. And then since we launched the opening in October of 2021, we've had over 500 appointments show up for training for free. So it works in LA when we say it's free. People can't quite grasp it, but we're there for every step of a dog. And we often get calls from people who are ready to surrender the dog, and we will take that dog into our program in Mission Hills. And if they can't do that training, we will then offer the 6-week board and train if they're going to be there for that dog when it comes out. And that's always a plus as well. So so the centre's going really, really well. It's I wish, you know, we could implant this in all the shelters where, you know, there's prison programs right next door, and then guys can come out and do work experience within the shelter community. So it's just a win-win for everyone, really.
So exciting, Alex, and congratulations on everything you are accomplishing. Can you tell us a little bit about so you launched in October. How many people have you supported and their pets have you supported?
So it's over. When we checked our numbers, because we do have a system where we can actually, you know, we can track everyone that's coming and the need that they're coming for. In January, it was just over 500 people. And so we're fully booked out right now till the end of March. But for anyone who has an emergency case, we get those people in straight away. You know, we and to the point where we even send a trainer to someone's home. You know, so we do a lot of stuff for rescues and for the shelters. So, you know, our idea is for us not to own animals. It's for us to just basically help everyone keep their animals, save them money on training, let them put that money into other resources, whether it's hiring staff members or whatever. And it's just to basically be a full wraparound community centre to help the public with their dogs.
Thank you. And so that's super impressive that you're just starting up the program and you've helped that many people in such a short period of time. How do people find out about you? I know there's sometimes challenges with these programs in terms of getting the people who really need the help into you. And it sounds like you're doing that very successfully.
Yeah, so we work closely with LA Animal Services, and also LA County. They put flyers in their adoption packets, and then we have something up in the shelter too on their cages that, you know, is a barcode that people can scan. It takes you right to the training page. And then our social media person, you know, posts every day about the training and the other programs that we offer to the public in the shelters.
Thank you. And so I'd love to hear now a little bit more about the program to keep pets in homes in terms of what type of support you all provide. Do you use volunteers? Is it all staff? I'd love to hear a little bit more about the program itself and how it runs.
John, you can answer that because I don't want to. Okay.
So we have, in addition to myself, we have 7 trainers on staff, and we're basically open 7 to 7 every day, 12 hours. People go online, make an appointment for either an individual session, a 1-hour session for private training or attend one of our group classes on the weekend. And people come to us with a variety of problems. Like every one of us experiences those type of calls. People that are having difficulty, with behavioral issues with the dog at the home. So people come in and we do an evaluation, assess the dog, and then start their first session right there. And we've had really good follow-up with people coming back. I think one thing I'll just kind of jump over is that at our facility at any one time we have 20 to 30 dogs too that belong to LA Animal Services. And with those dogs, we're able to identify, we run daily play groups, socialization sessions for the dogs. We're able to get the dogs to socialize, and that in turn helps the dogs get adopted and out of the shelter, and helps their overflow as well. But our biggest impact is serving the community by providing these services that a lot of people in the Los Angeles area can't necessarily afford. And so we're able to provide that support for free.
Thank you, John. These programs sound so amazing, but I also can imagine it's hard for some people on this call to imagine how they can get to this place where they have so many people available to support the program. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are. How did you build this program? How did you get funding?
So, we raised the money to build the center out, which was just under $500,000 privately from private donors. And then, the salaries come also from private donors right now, which isn't sustainable, that have paid salaries up for 1.5 years. But we will then, with the re-entry program, we're eligible to put in for grants through the state. So the state actually funds the prison programs. We were able to employ John, everyone is employed through the programs with the state. And then that program, we can actually start to employ trainers from the outside, because of the dogs that they're touching go into the prison. So we have to get really clever on how we spread that money. But this year we're going to go in for state funding for the re-entry, because now we have the statistics to show them of what we can do, because we want to start a program which is a re-entry program for anyone who comes out of prison, and they will do a mentorship with us for 12 weeks. And so John will oversee that, and it's a warm handoff program. So it's helping the person come out. We introduce them back into society, because most of the people that are in our prison program or are in the prison system have been in for 20, 30 years. And so them coming out is an extreme shock. So we're there to give them, it's called a warm handoff. So we're there to help them through and enter them back into society, but just, be there and create that safe environment where they can be around the dogs that they were around in the prison, and give them a sense of security and family. So, so that's how we hope to sustain it. And then we also partnered with someone up north, because our other 2 prisons are up north, and we handed one of the prisons over to them, and we're able to get them funded, because we've been in that prison 6 years and we want to move into another prison, and we just, we know not to spread ourselves too thin. And so they are going to mimic our center up north, because they inherited property too. And so we're able to duplicate that center up north as well. So it's just getting other people involved and spreading the blueprint of what we do, and helping them really dig deep into where the funding can come from the state and from the city. Instead of just going to foundations and asking them, there's got to be some sustainability where we know that money is good for 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
Important to note too, like we have inside we have over 200 incarcerated trainers working on a daily basis. So and many of them have been in the program 5, 6, 7 years already, since the beginning of the existence. So with over 200 guys working every day and 70 dogs being trained on a daily basis, people are gaining a lot of experience, and we send in professional world-class trainers to do seminars, and our staff goes in twice a week and does training sessions and classes and seminars, so that by the time people are ready to come out and come home, they're training dogs at a professional level, and they can come out and have that same impact working at our center or going into business privately.
Thank you, John. I'm just super excited about these reentry programs. The more I learn about them, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I think a lot about how I've been very, very lucky. But if not for having my family to support me, I could have very easily ended up in a not very good place early on in my life. And people who come out of the prison system so often get disregarded, and it's hard to find work and all those types of things. So these types of programs are just so, so important. And what a better way to help people heal than to have them work with animals that are often seen as forgotten as well. So congratulations on all that work you're doing.
Can I answer a question about the difficulty about starting a prison program?
Yes, go ahead.
So I think for us, it was pretty, to get into the actual prison, the prison wanted the program. So we already had a foot in the door once we knew they wanted that program. I think, we have to work with the employees of the prison, which is always the hurdle for us, because, sometimes we're looked upon as, you shouldn't be helping inmates, better their lives. They should be locked up. So I think building the relationships with the warden and the community resource managers is really important. And then also just knowing that there's no cost to them for us to bring this program in. And it helps, at the end of the day, it's proven now to help not only the people saving the time, but the staff as well. A majority of our adopters are the staff, and it connects that bond where they come in and they actually talk to one of our guys in the program about the dog. So they're actually treating each other like human beings and not inmate officer. So it sort of connects all these bridges and makes it a better workplace. But it's, you have to really contact the prison and make sure that they want that program. And we went in at first and we funded it ourselves. We didn't get state funding. And so we kept it really basic and simple. We paid a trainer to come in for 12 weeks at a time to do an AKC, Canine Good Citizen program. And then we realized, why aren't the dogs here all the time, constantly flowing? So they don't have to leave. The guys don't need 2 weeks break, 3 weeks break. Let's just keep this going. And so we were able to write that into the programs. And when the first hurdle that we had to get over when we first came in is that they said no bully breeds. And if anyone knows LA, that's all that's in the shelter. So we were able, after 2 years of showing we're really safe, nothing's going to happen, we were able to lift that. And now it's 99.9% bully breeds in the prison that we train. So it's quite remarkable with just, building that relationship with the staff and the warden and everything else, and being persistent.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Alex. Our next question is for Virginia, and it was from Caitlin, who was asking what the training process looks like with your behavior volunteers.
So we have 3 groups of volunteers. So we have dog pet pals who just walk dogs, and they go through and all volunteers at our shelter go through a general orientation, and then specific to their job orientations, and then generally a shadowing program. The dog pet pals go through, I'm sure most shelters do a tiered system of, experienced volunteers. At this point, we only have the most experienced volunteers back at our shelter. because we don't have easy dogs anymore. Yeah, so it's basically an orientation, a more specific training, and then a lot of shadowing is, sort of the fast answer.
Thank you. And do you have any resources available that you can share with other shelters that are trying to get these programs started?
I'm happy to help anybody. Do I have a volunteer? I think we have a handbook for the dog pet pals. I don't think we have any video orientations. We have all of our handouts are on our website for free. You can just have them. We also have our Family Dog One orientation is a video orientation now. So I'm happy to share that with anybody. It's all just basic stuff. I mean, if anybody wanted to ask me questions, I'm happy to one-on-one help anybody start up a program. Obviously, getting the volunteers in the door is the hardest part, and then just filtering out the experienced and the people who will stay. So we used to have like a 6-month commitment requirement. I think we got rid of that. Obviously, there's a lot of drop off after training of people who are just like, oh, I thought I was going to get to pet dogs all day. And, so those people fade away. So, yeah, I mean, I don't really think I have anything specific. We used to have a couple of brochures or workbooks or handouts or whatever you want to call them, but we moved away from that much more and into one-on-one, like shadowing seems to work better.
Thank you, Virginia. Alex and John, I'd love to hear from you all too. And with regard to training, do you have any resources that you can share, and what's the process? How many volunteers do you have, and what's the process for getting people trained?
So we don't really have that many volunteers. The volunteers that we have are more like admin volunteers. And then obviously we have people, we run play groups every day, twice a day. Dogs Playing for Life comes out. We pay Amy to come out and train our guys to be the best that they can be at running play groups. And so we'll bring in, when she comes out, we'll bring in shelter volunteers and other rescues to benefit from that training. Sometimes it's 9 days that she's on the ground with us. Sometimes it's 3. So, but we're pretty busy. We have around about, like last week we had 37 dogs, and our guys run those dogs to perfection every day. Plus they do the individual class training. So, so volunteers we're not big on, which is like, it's a blessing and not a blessing. Anyone who deals with volunteers. So, but but the guys are there, but they're not volunteering. But John, you can answer some of that.
Like Alex, we have a couple of volunteers. What we've learned, however, is kind of like Virginia was saying, where you come in and you spend time training them and getting up to speed, and then they decide it's not necessarily what they want to do. So because we're able to be fully staffed and also have our mentorship training program where other people are coming in and learning, and they're getting paid under what's called P2E, prison to employment. We're able to run people through kind of an educational and certification process, and that's really been the way that we're achieving these goals. But I think in the future, like Alex and I have discussed, if we can find a more sustainable method for volunteers, people that can really dedicate enough time and can make a commitment to, be there at the times when we need, we're obviously going to be open to that in the future, and it'll offset our costs as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Our next question is from Stacy, and the question is, do you have advice for shelters who do not have enough staff or funds to provide a high level of engagement with new adopters?
I'm happy to jump in here. I would, first of all, go on our website and get all our free stuff. Second of all, oh shoot, who is it? We partner with Shelter Buddy, and they have a pet academy that is totally free. You can just have all your adopters opt in. I've done the entire course. I have one for cats, one for dogs, and one for fosters. It's all really good. They do try to get clients for virtual training, but it's just easy and free, and you can access it for any of your adopters. At this point, there's so much free stuff. I think the easiest thing is to sit down for 3 hours and compile a resource list that you can easily, email people. Like for all our kitten adopters, we just have a resource that we email them, and it has all our kitten handouts. And we even offer free, if you go on our website, we have free virtual kitten and cat classes, I think every month or every other month right now. And anybody's welcome to join them. We also have, another thing that our shelter did in the beginning is you reach out to local dog trainers and say, hey, do you want to volunteer for a couple of weeks or, a couple of hours a week, and you can build your business and help us. That helps a lot. There's a lot of people who do online training classes to become dog trainers, and then they need live experience. So getting connected with any of those colleges and universities and online programs and starting to feed some of your local people into your system is really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I tend to go through and look for free, like if I want somebody to train their dog on a muzzle, they just get sent Michael Shikashio's video. I'm not reinventing the wheel anymore. There's no point to do that. We just share everybody else's stuff. Yeah, and there's a few people. Oh, and we do have, we have about 10, I think, of our handouts are in Spanish now. Not all of them, but I think we have 10 or 15 of the most common ones we managed to finally get translated into Spanish. And so those are on our website too. Oh, see, somebody said our handouts are good. Thanks.
Thanks, Virginia. Alex and John, do you have anything else to add there?
For us, I think what we're trying to do is, we're constantly thinking of what we can do to help the shelter system. And, like, for example, the dogs that we took last week, from Inland Empire, which we never pulled from there. We went there day one, and they were testing dogs, in between two cars, because there was no area to test a dog off leash. So I reached out to the director and was like, you guys can bring your dogs to our center. And the following morning, they loaded up 20 dogs and drove them to our center. And so they stayed the whole day. We ended up keeping 14 of the dogs, and then we're networking the 6 that went back. But now we offered for them to come out every Monday with the dogs that they need assessing, for us to work with them and then teach them play groups as well. So Monday they came out with 6 dogs, and those dogs spent the day at the center, and we got a really good read on them. I mean, there's dogs that I'll take from them if they don't get adopted this weekend at their shelter, because they are so overpopulated. So, and then our idea is to invite other rescues to come and see these dogs in this environment and take them instead of them going back to the shelter. So it's like we're constantly trying to come up with how can we help the shelters and then rescues, with any kind of like moving dogs through and being there to support them. So
thank you, Alex. So much interesting information today. I feel like we can talk for hours about all this. And let's all continue the conversation for sure on Maddie's Pet Forum. But before we leave, I want to know, what's your one thing? At the beginning, we talked about the purpose of this. I want everybody to take away one thing that you're going to do as an action item out of this to help improve how you support people and pets. So please feel free to unmute yourself and tell us what your one thing is, or type in the chat what you're going to do, or what you're going to learn, or who you're going to talk to.
I think for us to take away is that, everyone's got free handouts, and that's one thing we don't have. So maybe we should start to work on free handouts. So,
or better yet, use somebody else's free handouts.
Exactly.
A link to Marin Humane.
We'll put it on our website.
Thank you. Anyone else? What's your one thing?
The 6-week training program for those that are taking long-term stay dogs, that offering them the 6 weeks. I think we have the ability to set that up. We don't have a prison locally, but we have the ability to set it up with one of the colleges, or even volunteers. So I think that that might be something I like. Okay, well, you're going to take this one that's been with us, and here you go, 6 weeks. We're going to add this in. In 6 weeks from now, you should have a trained pet. So.
Thanks, Lynn. Yeah, that's a really exciting program, and glad you're thinking about it. Anybody else? All right, I see people typing into the chat. Alex, John, and Virginia, if you're comfortable with having people contact you with questions, can you please put your email in the chat so that people can contact you afterwards?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And Virginia, Alex, and John, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and experience. We really appreciate having you all today, and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, bye.